All right, man, peace. So now through two games of the 2018 NBA Finals, it's becoming more and more apparent that the Golden State Warriors superstar guard Steph Curry is very near the point where he's ready to throw that gorilla off of his back in regards to the overall narrative that he does not perform well in the finals. And even I've gotten on him in regards to some of his performances in the finals. But of course, we all know that when we scrutinize Steph Curry for how well he's played or hasn't played in the finals, it's directly based off of what he did in 2016 when the Golden State Warriors won 73 games in the regular season, and in the playoffs they struggled for a myriad of reasons, predominantly because of Steph Curry's injury issues, and in the finals he seemed to have a mental collapse. He certainly did in Game 3, and he appeared to have one in Games 5, 6, and 7. If you guys remember, he was kicked out of Game 6, and it was very obvious when you watch how Game 6 transpired that there was no way that the NBA was going to allow Golden State to leave Cleveland with a victory in that game. They kicked Steph Curry out when it looked like they were about to come back, and in Game 7 he was horrific. And it's been very difficult for him to live that performance down. Of course, there's a narrative that in 2015 he did not perform well in the finals. That's not true. In all reality, he should have won the MVP in those finals. But there was already a sentiment being built up by the media that we should give LeBron the MVP for the 2015 finals, even though he lost. And that pretty much was the start of the NBA liberal sports media trying to jump on the LeBron James bandwagon as if he can do no wrong. And over the last 4 years, NBA viewers have been inundated with these ridiculous claims about how LeBron James should be MVP every regular season and every finals. One of the more notable figures who likes to put forth that nonsense is Mr. Max Kellerman. And he's going to try it here once again, because I think that many of LeBron James' super fans who are sprinkled throughout the liberal sports media are starting to realize that the case to compare him to Jordan is very flimsy. So they're going to go about either trying to make up awards to give LeBron or giving him consolation prizes. So of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Can we talk about your boy Steph Curry putting on a scoring clinic last night? Passing Ray Allen. Yep, good chance he might be the MVP. We'll get into that later. And obviously 5 of the threes come.
Well, he will be the MVP. We're just going off of these first two games. He's going to have to perform well in Games 3 and 4. And I think that his teammates are going to assist him in that. We'll see.
He's coming in the fourth. Real impressive, Max. What does it say about Curry if he wins the Finals MVP?
What it will say about Steph Curry is exactly what I've been saying over the first few minutes of this video. And that is, a lot of his performances in the finals have been underrated. Please understand that he almost averaged a triple-double in last year's finals, and if he had the mindset of a LeBron James, he would have. And in 2015, he should have won the finals MVP. He averaged 26, 6, and 6. They gave it to Iguodala because that was a very tacit way of saying that we'd like to give it to LeBron, but we really can't. Really, the entire NBA narrative has revolved so tightly around LeBron James since he's gone back to Cleveland. It's really been rather pathetic.
Says that the voters on the Finals MVP check their brains at the door before they vote. And this has been happening. I've turned heel. I'm heel. This is called the heel turn. And this has been happening. And this has been happening. Silence. And this has been happening in the NBA Finals since time immemorial. Look, in the history of the Finals, who's the only player to win MVP?
Well, we all know that's Mr. Jerry West. And the NBA set a very bad precedent when they gave Jerry West the Finals MVP in 1969, despite the fact that he was just the best player on a losing team. And I've gone over this sentiment before. I've gone over this concept before. You can't be the MVP of any series on a losing team, because what's intrinsic in the term valuable in regards to a series is that your performance resulted in a victory. Because had you not been there and your team lost, they would have lost anyway, no matter how well you performed. So just the notion of giving a player an award for most valuable, despite the fact that he lost, shows that there is some type of agenda afoot. And what was the agenda in awarding Jerry West in 1969 in the finals, despite the fact that he lost. The agenda was that the NBA was starting to become recognized as a black man's league in the late 60s. And they were trying to controvert that by saying how much they could glorify their most prominent Caucasian player. That's the reason why Jerry West is the logo of the NBA to this day. Because from the late 60s through the early 80s, the NBA was widely recognized as a black man's league. It was also recognized as a cokehead league. And it wasn't until Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came into the NBA in 1979 that they started to turn the tide on how the NBA was perceived. In the meantime, they tried to promote and push the image of Jerry West as much as possible. Now, Dr. J did much to help the league because he had a very dignified, stately image. So when he came into the NBA in the late 70s, he assisted and helped the NBA in staying afloat. But it was Bird and Magic who really helped to turn the tide. And in that interim, they were doing their best to make sure that the image of Jerry West was viewed as the signifier for the NBA, when it really should have been Bill Russell.
P from the losing team, Jerry West. Jerry West, right? You mean to tell me that in every finals ever played, the best player in the finals, the most valuable one, is only ever from the winning team?
No, sir, but here's the real problem. You started your hypothetical question by trying to form a correlation between the term best player and the term most valuable player. And those two terms are not always linked. So you can be the most valuable and not always the best in a series. Now, over the course of a season, normally your best player is going to be your most valuable player. But even that has to be tested. It has to be evaluated based off of the performance of the team that person is on, because basketball is a team sport. But can you be the most valuable player in a series and be on the losing team? No. I don't care how well you play. I don't care how many points you score. If you average 50 points a game and you lose the series in 7, you should not be the most valuable player. Why is that? Because your team lost. But we're living in an age, in a time where people want to redefine why and when you should get awards and medals and things of that nature, because we're in a much more inclusive society.
Meaning you just discount the teammates of the best player on the winning team?
Fair.
No. So it happens a lot where the best player doesn't win the championship because his teammates aren't as good.
Well, it happens a lot that the so-called best player doesn't win the championship because maybe he's not as good as you'd like him to be. Maybe he did not do his job in elevating his teammates. And that normally is the case for LeBron James. But once again, the real importance of what Max Kellerman stated is the analogy that he used, or the comparison that he used, to Jerry West. Because I align LeBron James much more to Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain and Shaq than I do to Michael Jordan. Because I look at LeBron James and Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq and Jerry West as all-time great players who did not win as much as they should have or could have, as opposed to being a player like a Bill Russell or a Magic Johnson or a Michael Jordan or a Larry Bird, who absolutely won as many championships as they could. Now, we could say, well, Magic Johnson should have won in '84, but he didn't because he had some mental lapses. That's definitely a black mark on his resume. But for the most part, those players maxed out in regards to winning. LeBron James totally folded against the Mavericks. He came up short against the Warriors a couple times. Of course, people are going to say, well, he was outmanned. I have no problem with that, but don't tell me about how he's the greatest player in the history of the NBA. I don't want to hear about that.
Like, for example, this year, LeBron James should be working on his 4th consecutive Finals MVP, period. We all know that. Now.
So this fool actually believes that LeBron James should have been the Finals MVP over Kevin Durant last year. Wow.
I have here in front of me, in 2014, and by the way, there's proof. There's proof. I don't need to make this up. There's proof. In 2014, from where? In 2014-15.
Look at Max Kellerman. He's just so happy to have a microphone to his mouth and have all these black people in the audience forced to listen to him. He's having a flashback to '92, back when he was trying to rap. He probably feels like B Rabbit in 8 Mile. He's about to lose himself.
Who won the MVP, y'all? Who won it? Andre Iguodala. Why? Because
he won it because, and I agree with you on this sentiment, The reason why Iguodala won it is because the liberal sports media really wanted to give it to LeBron. So they had to indirectly give it to LeBron by giving it to Iguodala when they really should have given it to Curry.
Because he was guarding LeBron James. LeBron James in that series still went for 30, 11, and 8.5. And he went 6 games without Kyrie or Kevin Love. What are you joking? Was there any doubt who was the best player in the game on either team? Who was the most valuable? It was LeBron by a factor of infinity. It's not close. He was the...
Well, wow. If LeBron is better than everyone else by a factor of infinity, why did he not win the series? You're basically calling him a god. So if he's a god, how come he did not use his power to win the series, Max Kellerman?
The MVP, and I love Iguodala. I was talking to Andre Iguodala after the game last night. Great dude, great player. He only got it because he defended the best player in the series and the most valuable, LeBron James. Next year, 2015-16, LeBron won the MVP because his team won. You know what would have happened if they would have lost that series? Draymond Green would have been the MVP. What?
And he probably would have deserved it. He was great in Game 7. But you know what's funny? The year that LeBron did win the MVP in the finals, you easily could have given it to Kyrie Irving.
What, really? You mean LeBron James against that 73-win team juggernaut, had he lost by a possession, wouldn't have been the MVP? No, but they won, and it's amazing, and he did it, and he got it. Then last year, Kevin Durant had a great series. Do you know how much easier Kevin Durant's life is because he plays with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala in that system? And yet, the best player on the floor in either team, the most valuable, was obviously LeBron James.
Well, how come they lost in 5? Like, a lot of these protests by this idiot would make a lot more sense if the series would have at least won 7. LeBron actually had Kyrie Irving and he had Kevin Love and he had other talented players on the team last year, and they really should have got swept. Very disrespectful, some of these idiots. So once again, this is why LeBron James does not get a lot of the respect that he probably deserves, because people cannot view his career in proper context, because not only his fans but also himself want to overinflate his deeds and his exploits so that his name can be mentioned amongst players who he quite frankly cannot match accomplishments with.
And again, is there any doubt so far in this series who the best? Like, if you're choosing up teams, every single person in the universe is LeBron James. In this, just base the play on this series. Choose up teams. Who do you want on your team? LeBron James. It should be 4 straight. The reason it isn't is because the people who vote are too scared to use their brains. So they simply go, which team won? Let's give it to the best player on that team.
Goodness sakes, Max Kellerman must have snorted one hell of a line of coke that morning, allegedly.
It's idiotic.
All right, Stephen A., what you got for us?
Max Kellerman, you are asinine.
You know, there's a couple of things. Number one,
I'm really trying to see when my contract is up here, because I just cannot work with this man anymore. This man has the audacity, the temerity, the unmitigated gall to talk about basketball.
Michael Jordan was never robbed of an MVP trophy because he never had to, because he won when he got there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith understands that there has to be a correlation between winning the MVP and winning the finals.
He didn't lose 5 times. That's number one. Number two is interesting because you see, Max and I usually get into this argument, and sometimes I tell him his name is mediocre because he doesn't mind mediocrity. It's like it's not about winning. It's about, oh my goodness, look at what you did numbers wise.
Well, that's what LeBron James Superfan 101 class is all about, Stephen A. Smith. It's all about, look at what he did in regards to his numbers. Look at how many points he had. Look how many rebounds and assists he had. Doesn't matter whether he won or not, because they've already created this little safe zone for them to play in where they could say, well, LeBron has no help. And LeBron understands that, so he knows he can go out there and play for himself, and he'll already have preset excuses configured in the media and amongst his fan base. So it truly doesn't matter whether he wins or not. He's pretty much just playing with house money. Now, he plays hard because he wants to win, but he knows that if he loses, he's going to have a contingent that will always have his back, because they've made it so that it does not matter what your one-loss record is in the finals anymore. That's why I've stated, for the sake of consistency now, we have to say that Jerry West is better than Kobe Bryant. We have to say that Chris Paul is better than Isaiah Thomas. We have to say that Dirk Nowitzki is better than Larry Bird, because their stats are actually better than those other players. Even Jerry West has better stats than Kobe. He's a much more proficient player than Kobe Bryant was, but he's 1-8 in the finals. Kobe Bryant is 5-2 in the finals. And as the lead guy, he's 2-1. We all know that Kobe Bryant was greater than Jerry West, but I'm just saying, if you listen to the LeBron James stupor fans and how they want to recalibrate what greatness is and how you gauge it, that's how you're going to have to reorganize all these players. I'm sure that Chris Paul has scored more points, had more assists, and has more rebounds over the course of his career than Isaiah Thomas had. We know that Isaiah Thomas was a greater player because he actually won. And he was clutch in clutch moments, unlike CP3. For the most part. CP3 has had his share of breakdowns when it's counted.
Wise. Well, I'll give you that. LeBron James is the best in the world. He said it when he was losing a few years ago in the final. He said, I'm the best in the world. That was in the midst of losing to Steph Curry. We get all of that. But the objective is to win. That's what I was told. That's what I was taught.
Allegedly. Doesn't seem like that's the objective anymore, though, sir.
Okay, and he hasn't gotten that done 5 times. Number 3, it's really
soon to be 6.
Really interested how we bring up the superlatives and the positives, including you, Max, about LeBron James. And I am not about to knock the notion that LeBron James is the best in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, he is. There is no question about that. But here's the thing that I would ask you to consider, Max. What about LeBron James and how much he hurts his teammates? Those very teammates that you praise, that you go off about and say they're garbage. Well, let me ask you this. Rodney Hood is no all-star. He's no sensational player, but he was averaging 17 a game in Utah. Jordan Clarkson was averaging 15 in a Lakers uniform. What I'm trying to say to you is that George Hill was once a solid starter. This is the thing about LeBron. LeBron is great. LeBron leads to opportunities for other players. There is no doubt about that. But can we pay attention to the fact that his willingness to hold the ball and his willingness to leave folks standing around to wait to see what he does sort of curtails what they want to do, because it's more difficult for them to find their rhythm because they're sitting around waiting and hoping for him to get them the ball. Now,
That's because they're playing in the LeBron James system, Stephen A. Smith. See, a lot of these guys are finally starting to catch up to what I've been telling you brothers for the longest time. They're finally starting to pick up on it. After 15 years, these niggas finally starting to see that LeBron James can only play in the LeBron James system, and that he marginalizes a lot of the talent around him and makes them look like they can't play when they really can.
obviously,
LeBron James, he's like a vampire. He just sucks all the life energy out of his teammates. Their job is to be a part of the LeBron James spectacle. And of course, in return, they're going to get a free ride to the finals. But they're never going to get to really show what they can do. That's why after about 3 years, they get tired of him and they have to go.
see the ball is supposed to be in his hands, but we're talking about basketball here. Now, last but not least, to answer this question directly, I'm going to tell you exactly what this says about Steph Curry if he wins this finals MVP. It says 2 things. Number 1, he is the greatest shooter I have ever seen in my life.
I agree. Him and Larry Bird.
The greatest shooter. But it also says this. Damn, he don't have much to go up against. Because when you look at this Cleveland backcourt, what they did in the conference finals, what they've done in these finals. I mean, we're ready to throw a parade for George Hill just because he had 12 points in the first half. They haven't. I mean, don't get me started with what JR has not done, or Clarkson for that matter, or anybody else. So if you're Steph Curry, as good as he is, remember, there was some trouble when he was going up against CP3 in Houston in the conference finals. There was some trouble. Okay, let's remember those guys. There's a little bit of trouble. I'm not saying he didn't perform, but when he was going up against Drew Holiday in New Orleans, that wasn't a joke either. It helps that you're going up against an opponent that you don't have to worry about offensively, and you get to focus on your offense because you don't really have to play defense because they ain't doing anything for you.
I partially agree with you, brother, but please understand that Steph Curry is never going to be in a position where he does not have to worry about who he's guarding defensively, because they're always going to make sure that he's involved in the pick and roll and he has to guard the best player on the opposing team one-on-one. So it's really not about his one-on-one matchup when he comes into a series, because he's going to have to guard the James Hardens. He's going to have to guard the best backcourt player and maybe even the best wing on the opposing team, because they're going to switch and make sure that he has to deal with that matchup defensively. Beyond that, in last year's finals, he went up against Kyrie and thoroughly outplayed Kyrie over the course of the series. He averaged 27, 9, and 8 against Kyrie last year and actually closed out Game 5 by totally crossing up Kyrie and hitting the three right in his face.
Two things. One, I'm going to get to the winning and losing. You say, I thought the object was to win. If you compare anyone to Michael Jordan, including LeBron James, they're going to come up short. I'm not going to argue against that. But the idea that it's winning or losing, it is a zero-sum game, meaning either you win or you lose. There's no in between. But in trying to determine value, you have to ask yourself, who made the largest contributions toward winning? That's the question.
Yes, who made the largest contributions towards winning for the team that won, Max Kellerman? That's the point. It's not about who made the largest contributions to the team that won a game or won 2 games, right? You play to win the game. Isn't that what Herm Edwards said?
And clearly and by far, it's not close. LeBron James does more to help his team win, whether or not the rest contribute enough that they actually get that result. He brings you closer to that result than any other player in the world by far. Okay, 1, 2. I'm going to address that right now. I think he does. I think that you can make the argument, at least, that by holding the ball, by dominating the ball too much, you can reduce the effectiveness of other players on your team.
Of course, that's why I've stated already to you, brothers. LeBron James represents the apex of ball-centric style of play. He's like a Russell Westbrook, a James Harden, except bigger, more skilled, and with a higher basketball IQ. But that's pretty much all he is. And you see the same phenomenon on all 3 of those teams, where you just have the other 4 guys waiting for the ball, waiting to take a 3-point shot. And it makes the team very stagnant. And that's why it's difficult for players to play for very long on teams like that or with players like that.
In LeBron's case, however, the ball still moves. What are we complaining about? That guys who really shouldn't be putting the ball on the floor are missing open threes. He's getting them open looks. Now, the idea that Jordan Clarkson is a good player is ridiculous. I watched Jordan Clarkson carefully on the Lakers. Jordan Clarkson...
That's bad camera work. They were supposed to show us Stephen they did there.
Jordan Clarkson is the type of player that people who don't know basketball think is a good player. Because...
Well, I partially agree with that. But Jordan Clarkson also has potential. Potential that he will never see come to fulfillment playing with LeBron James.
He fills up the box score on bad team, but he's not actually a good player. Jordan Clarkson, you'll see in this next go-round what he gets paid. It's not going to be much. You'll see if they can trade him for something valuable. They won't be able to. He doesn't play defense. His offense is overrated. It's inefficient. He attacks like he's Westbrook, but he doesn't have that level of talent. That's Jordan Clarkson. Rodney Hood should be a starter, but for whatever reason, he hasn't yet developed to that point. When you talk about filling up the stat sheet, it depends.
Well, Rodney Hood needs touches. And he needs to find touches, meaning there actually have to be plays in the offense that are executed for him, where Ty Lue goes to the chalkboard and he says, this play is for Rodney. I'm not even sure if they have that in their offensive package. I pretty much believe that Ty Lue goes to the chalkboard and just writes LeBron on the chalkboard and then says, okay, y'all niggas figure it out from there. Because that's pretty much what it looks like out there on the floor. Now, there have been a couple of games over the course of this postseason where it was very clear that there was a concerted game plan to get Kevin Love involved. And whenever that was the case, Kevin Love went out there and got 25 and 13. So they have talent on that team. It's just whether or not LeBron James wants to allow another player to get shine.
Depends how efficiently you do it. Can you do that in the context of a team that wins? And the answer is, for those teammates that LeBron James has, no.
I'm going to be a team player and save you from yourself. That ain't what you said before they got to Cleveland. You didn't sit up there. You did not sit up there and say Clarkson couldn't play. You didn't say, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm not saying that you raved about him. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not putting you out there on Front Street like that. I am saying you sat up there and just said he's not a good player. That ain't what you said when he was with the Lakers.
Well, you know what, Stephen A. Smith? For the most part, all of the LeBron James superfans on television were extremely happy when that trade went down. Shannon Sharpe, Chris Broussard, Colin Cowherd, Max Kellerman, Nick Wright, they all said, oh, this is our chance now. We brought in some fresh blood, some young players. Now watch what LeBron James does. And they understood essentially that by bringing in those young players and that inexperienced talent, that group of neophytes, that LeBron James was now in a no-lose situation. And that's really what they were happy about. Either all the glory was going to go to him if he were to lead this ragtag group of guys to the finals, or if they flamed out early, everyone would just say, well, LeBron didn't have enough help. That's how that goes.
That is not what you said when Rodney Hood was on Utah. All I'm trying to say to you is this. Whatever you say, forget the validity of your statement or lack thereof. What I am saying to you is you didn't say it when they were in Utah or LA. You said it now. So if you're saying it now, where's the correlation? I am simply conceding that when you look at LeBron James, no doubt he's the greatest in the world. But because he's the greatest and because he's so head and shoulders above those very teammates that he has, and you yourself, Max, have called him the greatest point guard ever. Did you not say that? Okay, you said it. You said it's the greatest point guard, even greater than Magic Johnson. What I'm saying to you is this. If you feel that way about...
I think that Max Kellerman and Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd, they want to be LeBron James's wives. It's very obvious.
About him, and he has the basketball, right? And he's sitting around and taking 14, 15, 16 seconds off the shot clock, and guys are standing around. Can't a legitimate basketball argument be made that even the most talented player is going to be limited and curtailed to some degree because you got them standing around being spectators?
Yes, no player is perfect, including LeBron. And the argument that there's no downside to the way he plays on offense, it's not true. There is a downside. There are trade-offs. And sometimes his judgment of how to perfectly distribute the ball and the flow of the energy.
Well, then how can you say guys can't play?
What I'm saying is this. Lots of players in the NBA, because most of them are amazing athletes and amazing players, been working their whole lives and are the best of the best of the best. A lot of them can fill up the stat sheet on a bad team. So guys like Jordan Clarkson, Jeff Green, and
LeBron,
and some others go on a bad team. And some others, when you see them on a bad team, you can think, it's hard to tell if they're actually good or not. Then you have to see them on a good team, see if their game still translates to winning.
Well, you have to see many of these marginal players with a lot of physical ability on teams that run a system that's conducive to bring out what they do best. And this is what guys like Max Kellerman, who's just a human printer, this is what he continuously and continually does not seem to grasp. It's not just about the eye test. It's not just about how fast somebody runs or how high they jump. It's also about what skills they have and how they can aid a certain team. This is why you'll see great role players that fit in on certain teams, but they go other places and they just wallow. Look at a Robert Horry. On the Rockets, on the Lakers, on the Spurs, he contributes to winning championships, but he goes somewhere else and he wallows at the end of the bench. So you have to run a system to bring out what's best in your players. And if you don't really fit into the LeBron James system, you're not going to look good.
Chris Bosh gave you 20 and 10 in Toronto. He went to Miami. He didn't put up numbers, but he was still obviously a great player who helped his team win. Jordan Clarkson put up 15 points a game on the Lakers, a bad team. When he got to a good team, you could see he's not that good.
Hey, Max, let me shut this off. Hold on. Let me shut this argument down right now. JaVale McGee shot 100% from the field yesterday.
Of course, he's on the Warriors.
He's going to Warriors.
But that's passion.
I'm just saying. But the point is, there are people that are on good teams that ain't that great, but guess what? Being on a good team could make them look good. No. You got guys on Cleveland that may look worse than they actually are because LeBron.
Guys,
JaVale McGee is playing with 4 All-Stars.
Gotta call a timeout.
It's not about the amount of all-stars that JaVale McGee's playing with. It's about that system. It's about their culture. In the Golden State culture, they actually sincerely want to see everyone do well. Steph Curry could have that team all to himself, and he could be averaging 34 a game right now, if that's really what he wanted to do. He was a part of that contingent that went out to recruit Kevin Durant. Everything went how they hoped, and they've brought in a lot of reclamation projects. JaVale McGee, Nick Young, and they've all bought in because they understand that sincerely, it seems as though everyone in that franchise wants what's best for everyone on the team in regards to what they can bring to the table. And that's what brings out the best in everyone. Once again, LeBron James is like the lead singer in a rock band. Everyone else is just for the background. Do not try to steal his spotlight.
You brought some flowers for LeBron, too? Did you order them? You ordered them? Got your flowers.
Stephen A. Smith is picking up the same energy that I'm picking up. It's a borderline homoerotic infatuation that Max Kellerman has. That's why I say, once again, fanboy and fag boy is not too much difference. But anyway, peace.